Usually when people get exposed for living fake lives, they are some sort of influencer or celebrity. However, today we're going to be taking a look back at some of the more nefarious cases of seemingly regular people getting exposed for living a double life. I'm going to get into all those details in just a moment, but first, if you could do us a big favor and please tap that like button, we'd really appreciate it. With that out of the way, let's begin. In at number 10, Frank Abagnale Jr. If you've watched the movie Catch Me If You Can starring Leonardo DiCaprio, you'll remember that he played a character named Frank Abagnale Jr. The movie is based on the real-life story of Frank, who from the ages of 15 to 21 pulled off some of the world's biggest cons. This man really just fooled people into thinking that he was whoever he wanted them to think he was. For example, he wanted people to think he was a pilot, so he called Pan Am and told them that he was a pilot who had just accidentally lost their uniform. They actually believed him, and they ended up sending him the location of where to pick up a new one. Then he said he was a college student doing interviews on the life of a pilot, and within a short amount of time, he had gotten an interview with a Pan Am pilot and learned everything he needed to know about how he was going to get on the various airlines as a fake pilot. On top of that, once he had some credentials, he then wrote over $2.5 million in bad checks pretending to be this Pan Am pilot. Eventually, the FBI caught wind of this and he was soon arrested in France. Although because he was able to run this scam so easily, the FBI ended up recruiting him after he served his prison sentence, and he has worked with them for over 30 years on how to spot a fraud and prevent scams from spreading. In at number 9, Anna Christina. The double life that Anna was living is absolutely wild. Her LinkedIn had herself employed as an internet marketer, but according to her friends, she would say that she was the CEO of a very successful company. She is better known though as the British soccer mom Madam, mainly because during the day she would do things like take her 4 kids to school and soccer practice, but at night she ran a prostitution ring. After the police did a 5-year investigation on her, she was eventually arrested and charged with her bail being set at $2 million because they deemed her as a very high flight risk. Allegedly, her clients included politicians, billionaires, police officers, and some other very high-ranking government officials, all located in Manhattan. In 2012, she pleaded guilty and was in jail for 4 months before being sentenced. However, according to more recent articles on her now, she is living on a pig farm in Monroe, Orange County with her son Nick and her 5th husband Joe, while also writing children's books under a pen name that is unknown to the public. In at number 8, Senator Leland Lee. Senator Leland Lee was by all accounts an outstanding member of society and a beloved citizen of California. He even was the president of the San Francisco School Board and in one of the highest positions as a Democrat in the state of California. He really had been doing an excellent job of building a good rapport in the community until it was all exposed. After the FBI conducted a sting operation, they found out that not only was he not a great citizen of California, but he wasn't really a great human for that matter either. Lee had been buying missiles and guns from a terrorist organization in the Middle East and selling them to make a massive profit for himself. His charges included racketeering, money laundering, and bribery. By March of 2016, Lee had turned himself in and was sentenced to 5 years in a federal prison. In at number 7, Anna Chapman. Anna presented herself as the owner of a real estate business by day and a socialite living a life of luxury in New York City by night. However successful people believed her to be, though, they had no idea that she was equally as successful at her second job of being a Russian spy. After a Russian government official notified the US about the complex spy network that had recently infiltrated communities in the United States, Anna was exposed. The FBI conducted a sting operation that resulted in Anna and many others being arrested. They were all sent back to Russia later on, where they were paid handsomely for the intel on American policies and other secrets that they had stolen. While most of the spies chose to assume new identities, Anna decided to lean into her viral fame of being called a femme fatale. Now she hosts her own television show and even has appeared on the cover of Maxim. In at number 6, Mata Hari. Mata Hari was known as a Middle Eastern erotic dancer that became very popular in Paris with higher-up military officials. After arriving in Paris in 1905, she began performing Asian-inspired dances and touring all over Europe, telling the story of how she was born in a sacred Indian temple. According to her, it was a priestess who taught her these ancient dances and gave her the name Mata Hari, which meant Eye of the Day in Malay. However, her reality was much different. Mata Hari was actually Margaretha MacLeod, who was born in the Netherlands in 1876. She was married and had 2 kids when she moved to Java, and while she was there with her son, he had died mysteriously and her marriage started to fall apart. To reinvent herself, she took off to Paris and assumed a new identity. During the peak time of her popularity, though, it was right in the middle of the First World War. the French government started to get suspicious of her when she was spotted having many interactions with German officials. After trying to recruit her as a spy for France, they realized that they couldn't trust her, and so she was sentenced to be executed by a firing squad at the age of 41 for crimes of treason. In number 5, Gary Thompson. A man from Kentucky named Gary Thompson had been in a car accident several years before being exposed for living a fake life. He did get hurt but recovered and received $2 million from the accident. However, years later, Gary was pretending to be a disabled panhandler and reportedly made over $100,000 from begging. He would slur his words, slump over in a wheelchair, and even hold out a hat whenever people walked by. All of that was revealed to be an act he was putting on to get more money from the general public. The bogus beggar ended up pleading guilty to defrauding the Supplemental Security Administration for failing to report income and falsely misrepresenting his mental condition to receive benefits. He also admitted that he had been begging from 2009 to 2013 and falsely obtained Medicaid benefits totaling over $81,000. In number 4, John Leonard Orr. This man was absolutely insane, and it's wild that it took so long for people to expose his fake life. John Orr was both a fire marshal and an arson investigator. Now, those sound like great jobs that anyone would be lucky to have. However, it turns out that for this job to work, you need fires to investigate. Well, John had no issue with that because he just so happened to be a serial arsonist. Throughout the 80s and the 90s, John set more than 2,000 fires in Southern California. It's been estimated that the fires he set cost the state of California hundreds of millions of dollars in damages. Plus, the fires also claimed the lives of at least 4 people, including a toddler. Now, not only did he like to set fires, but he also liked to manipulate the fire department. John wouldn't just set one fire, he would set brush fires to draw the firefighters out of town just so that he could set more fires in crowded stores. Not only was the brush fire guaranteed to inflict massive damage, but the store fires would cause absolute chaos. Currently, he is serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole. In number 3, Ted Haggard. Mr. Haggard used to be the head pastor at a giant church in Colorado Springs and was one of the leaders of the National Association of Evangelicals. The married man with children was also listed by Time magazine as being one of the most influential people of 2005. However, that was just his public persona. Haggard was hiding a very deep and very dark secret behind closed doors. Several men and even young boys exposed Ted for making inappropriate contact with them, which resulted in him taking a leave of absence from the church and then ultimately resigning from his position. The church would later release a statement saying that he was no longer welcome there. In number 2, John Wayne Gacy. If you've never been scared of clowns before, this guy will make you rethink that. John Wayne Gacy pretended to be a childhood party entertainer and would often show up dressed as a clown. Not only that, but as a manager of several Kentucky chicken restaurants, he was also a valued member of his community. People viewed him as a hard worker and very motivated individual. But John's real passion wasn't in entertainment or the chicken business. He preferred to be a killer. From 1972 to 1978, Gacy took the lives of at least 33 people, most of which were young men. What's wild is that he had been previously accused of acting inappropriately with a community member's son, but he convinced the members that the son and the father were both liars. After attacking another person, he served 18 months of a 10-year sentence and then relocated and rebranded himself as the owner of a construction business, which is when he carried out all those horrific acts that I mentioned before. Last but certainly least, our number 1 spot, Ed Gein. Ed is about as twisted as a human could be, and Ed was known by his neighbors to be this very quiet farmer and handyman. After his mother passed away, he became very distraught and started to board up all of the rooms in his home that his mother would often go into. He would keep these rooms extremely clean while the rest of the house was an absolute mess. In 1957, Ed gained mass notoriety when authorities discovered that he was exhuming several corpses from a local graveyard and turned them all into various objects around his home. On top of that, he also confessed to killing 2 women. His main objective was to fashion a suit made out of real human skin that he could just wear around his house, and even had intentions of bringing his mother back to life by actually becoming his mother. He was later found guilty but sent to a psychiatric institution after the court determined that he was legally insane. Duh, you think? He turned human skin into lampshades. Yeah, legally insane. Either way, that has been the top 10 people exposed for living fake lives. As always, we would love to hear your thoughts on this, so don't forget to drop us a comment down below. But for now, I've been your host, Johnny Rogers, and until next time, stay classy, YouTube, or at least try.